But again, he's clearly out of his mind. He likes communists. He likes Hitler. He likes white supremacists. He's into all this stuff. But the overriding issue is the people that knew him said he was extremely left-wing. So it's not fair to come out and try to attack the First Amendment and say that conservatives, libertarians, people like Ron Paul caused this to happen with our heated rhetoric. Our country's going into a depression. Offshore banks have stolen trillions of dollars. We've got all these illegal wars going on. Whether you call yourself left, right, libertarian, patriotic, constitutionalist, anarchist, whatever, you have a right to say you're sick of the government, you want it off our back. It's the biggest government in history. It's the most out-of-control government in history. We're going bankrupt here. And now there's all these Republican senators and others saying, we've got to lower the rhetoric. That's right. Yes, we've all got to bipartisan agree not to criticize each other. Ladies and gentlemen, you go back 200 years ago, people were routinely getting in fistfights on the Congress floor. Freedom is a dirty business. And you know what? An armed society is a polite society as well. But you look at Mexico, where they've had now upwards of 30,000 deaths. It's way over 28,000 now. Many of them police, mayors, you name it. The highest number of, quote, public servants being killed in the world. Aaron Dykes wrote an article about it Saturday and linked to our government's own statistics. They have a total gun ban for their citizens. And so when they sit here and tell you that you've got to give up all of your Second Amendment and your free speech because your free speech and your Second Amendment caused this, they're saying America and liberty and freedom caused it and that it's bad. And when Potok of the Southern Slime Center gets up on television and blames Ayn Rand and David Icke and says people that are into gold and silver, when this schizophrenic made a couple comments about, if I say I have a currency, then I am the treasurer. And then he repeated it over and over again. So now if somebody commits a crime and they're into gardening, does that mean gardening's bad? I mean, this is the message that you better sit down, shut up, and do what the government says and hand over your dollars and let them raise your taxes and let them control your life and turn your guns in while the government masses all this paramilitary force against us and routinely shoots kids in the backs and tasers people to death. You know, we're not supposed to be worried about that. Let the state have all the power it wants, but that counterbalance, the armed citizen, oh, that's dirty, that's bad. And then I point out again, you got a pro-gun woman who's a blue dog Democrat who the Democrats have been attacking. I've got a whole bunch of reports how much they hate her and how she's been getting threatened by the left, the controlled paradigm left. And you got this very conservative federal judge who went to meet with her about the deteriorating border and that the drug gangs have taken over up to 85 miles in to the state. And he's dead. And he's a guy that ruled against Clinton in Clinton's gun grabbing. Very, very suspicious. Now, continuing here. Now, this is the key right here that I'm about to get into. This is the most important point of it all. 41 minutes into the first hour, and I'm begging you to get this out to everyone you know. I'm very thankful for the Drudge Report having us linked from Saturday right through to today with our big article about Arizona shooter obsessed with mind control. And now other newspapers are interviewing people in the college. He'd walk in and say, do you believe in mind control? And he'd tell people he was under mind control. And all he did was gibber about mind control. There was the gentleman, you can pull this up, in 1998 that killed 13 people at a Baptist church in Fort Worth. He'd been in Navy, Black Ops. He had been in mind control programs, just like the L.A. Times. Alexander Cochran reports that the Unabomber was in a CIA LSD experiment. That is declassified. Now, who does this guy ask for as his lawyer? Theodore Kaczynski's lawyer. Just like Jolyon West was the doctor for Jack Ruby. And Ruby said, they're giving me cancer injections. People didn't know at the time the CIA had developed that. Now it's admitted. Shot him up, killed him. That's on record. Then Jolyon West becomes McVeigh's physician from the time he's arrested through the trial in Denver, in Terre Haute, Indiana. He died a few years ago. Number 2 in mind control, according to the MK Ultra 77 declassified. The public number 2 man in mind control under Dr. Ewing Cameron, and he's the doctor at the bedside when Jack Ruby's fine, the shooter of Lee Harvey Oswald. I mean, folks, it never ends. Now he's asking for the Unabomber's lawyer. When it's admitted that the Unabomber was in a CIA black op program. You cannot make this up. It's a staged event. My gut tells me all the evidence is there. Just like when we had the lawyers on, Mr. and Mrs. Haskell, both lawyers, within 4 days after the Christmas Day bombing, going back 12 and a half months ago, and they reported that they saw the sharp-dressed man get him on the plane without a passport, that there was an argument, and the sharp-dressed man called rank. Then there was a guy videotaping the underwear bomber, Muttalib, the entire time. They pulled him off, reportedly found other bombs. Then they were told to shut up. Then they told their story. The FBI visited them, told them they were wrong. Then a month and a half after that, the Undersecretary of State came out, Mr. Kennedy, and said, "Don't blame me. I was ordered by an unnamed U.S. agency to help him get on the plane." That is public. I told you that was staged. How did I know? Christmas Day, my wife says, "Go get eggs, please," because everything else at the grocery store was closed. I go to the gas station. I'm getting the eggs, getting myself a Topo Chico mineral water. Waddle up to the checkout counter. They got the TV on, and it's a shooting. It's a bombing. I go get in my car, and by the time I got home, 10 minutes later, sitting in the car listening, right after it happened, they've got the former head of Homeland Security on television saying, "We'll order scanners now because this happened," and the spin was on every channel that, "Don't worry, they're going to put scanners in because this happened," when they'd ordered him a year before, and Chertoff had given the order when he was still the head of Homeland Security to begin the purchase of them. And now he's the head of the company. Again, that's just one little piece. When you hear them immediately ready, immediately scripting, you notice you didn't hear any more about these firecracker bombs in Maryland last week, because those were probably real lone nuts that did that. When it's real, they're not ready. They don't know how to handle it. Okay, but when it's staged, they hit the ground running, and they're ready. And then the evidence just comes out. And it's on record the government got the underwear bomber on the plane, boys and girls. It's on record Anwar al-Awlaki, the admitted CIA asset secretly meeting at the Pentagon, runs all these people. It's admitted that for 2 years they knew Hussein was planning the attack at Fort Hood under Anwar al-Awlaki's control. So I know a staged event when I see one, but I wasn't sure Saturday and Sunday, and I said so last night. But I said, looking at his M.O., most of these mind control guys are given a personality template that they are a Grim Reaper devil worshiper and that they've got all this power. And I said, I believe he's a devil worshiper into the kind of vampire type subculture. You know, imaginary vampire. And sure enough, ladies and gentlemen, black magic, vampirism, and all the stuff that goes with it, dressing up like a woman, being a liberal, going and helping at the dog park. I mean, it's all 100% goes together, part and parcel, and all integrates together. And here's another headline. Shooting suspects' nihilism rose with isolation. Exactly. Into everything dark. I love Hitler, he says. I love communism. I love the devil. I love voodoo. You know. Do what? And it says he's a truther in the article. Yeah, this is definitely a mind control. This whole thing was scripted from the beginning. I mean, look, I've got all the articles right here in front of me. Will Obama force America to absorb a terror attack to save his presidency? That's September 22nd, 2010, with all these White House advisors saying how great a big attack on the government would be to make them look like the victims. Here's another one. Top Fed repeats ominous absorbed terror attack rhetoric. But they know you don't buy into the Muslim stuff anymore. So this happens. Now, before I get into that new development, let's get to this article that we've got to get out to everybody. Liberal smear machine backfires after gunman found to be a cultist, pot-smoking left-winger. A full-scale demonization campaign against conservatives, free speech, and the Second Amendment on behalf of Democrats and the establishment media in the wake of Saturday's shooting has sensationally backfired after it emerged that the gunman, Jared Lee, was a left-wing, pot-smoking liberal who was into dressing like a Grim Reaper and dabbling in the occult. So again, we've got this Loughner individual who is a kaleidoscope, a cornucopia, whatever you want him to be, he's it. Again, they want to demonize marijuana legalization movement, boom, he's that. You know, the animal rights people, he's that. The left, the right, just everything. In their fervor to tear down the First and Second Amendments, Democrats and their allies in the corporate media hastily characterize him as an anti-government right-winger in the rush to link him to the Tea Party and Sarah Palin, a contention that is still being invoked as Dems seek to rush through gun control legislation as well as a bill that could make criticism of government a form of hate speech. However, precisely as Alex Jones forecast on a show last night, and he's got a link to it, it has emerged this morning that he is a devil worshiper wannabe who idolized fake human skulls and dressed up like the Grim Reaper. Well, more than that. I mean, that's a Santeria if it's the white side, you know, voodoo if it's the black side. It's death worship, devil worship, with a skull, giving it oranges. I mean, that's what they do. How often have you witnessed a Tea Partier, an anti-government activist, or a conservative engage in any of the following behaviors, all of which are confirmed to have been conducted by Loughner? Burning an American flag, being a left-winger and a liberal, that's what all his friends said, smoking pot, having long hair, dressing up as the Grim Reaper, dabbling in a cult by worshiping a replica of a human skull, expressing the desire to be a woman, describing Karl Marx's Communist Manifesto as his favorite book. Does it sound like Jared Lee was a right-wing conservative, as the liberal smear machine is attempting to claim, despite the fact that his former classmate described him as, quote, quite liberal and left-wing? The New York Times, Washington Post, along with a host of statist blogs like the Huffington Post and Daily Kos, were beating the drum for so-called right-wingers, opponents of Obamacare and big government. You ought to really love the tyranny, liberals. He continues the torture, the wars. You're not liberals. You're a bunch of fascists. To be politically silenced in the name of toning down the rhetoric. Really, when Obama is saying they bring a knife, we bring a gun, or when you're talking about how on the Daily Kos, how she's dead to you and how horrible she was. In reality, the shooter's political views were all over the map, sharing characteristics of conservatism, liberalism, and libertarianism. He was a fundamentally disturbed and deranged individual. Now, when we come back, now he's a truther. That's right. Mumbling in class about mind control constantly. He's got a voodoo shrine in his backyard. And then we've got all this legislation being proposed to shut down the First Amendment and Second Amendment. Here it is right here. The shooter, reported shooter, said he didn't want people to wake up every day to the same day. He wanted more chaos. He wanted less regularity. That's what Harris and Kleinbold said. And now they're unnamed friends. There's all these other MySpace and Facebook's records of what was said about being a Grim Reaper, wanting to be a woman. But now there's unnamed people saying that they would hang out and smoke marijuana every day with the crew. And when they weren't going to concerts or watching movies, they talked about the meaning of life and dabbled in conspiracy theories. See, if you question the government or Gulf of Tonkin, even though it's admitted it was staged, that causes you to dress up like the Grim Reaper and get into voodoo and Karl Marx and kill people. Mistrust of government was his defining conviction, the friend said. He believed the government was behind 9/11 and worried that governments were maneuvering to create a unified monetary system, a new world order currency. So see, now when it's all over the news every day, they're setting up a world government. You're not supposed to talk about it or have an opinion, even though it's all being set up, because, oh, he's one of those shooters, as the IMF and World Bank announced the Band Corps, as all of this unfolds and happens. So, classic, and this is out of the Associated Press, known for being government-run, so there's no telling if it's even true. It certainly may be. But the issue here is we know he's got the devil's shrine at his house. We know he wanted to be a woman. We know he's dressing up like the Grim Reaper, burning American flags. We know he's writing about the Communist Manifesto. That does not equal Ayn Rand. That does not equal David Icke. And so the system is desperate. They've got to get us back under mind control, get us back under their control, get us back under that trance of feeling sorry for the government and, oh, my gosh, and it's so terrible. Meanwhile, this is a government that's killed over 1 million Iraqis, over 1 million Vietnamese based on lies, lying about WMDs, calling for violence against nations, telling us that torture of people's children in front of them to get answers is good. A government so arrogant that they've been writing public policy reports saying how great a tax on the government would be as a pretext to have the government have the excuse to take our liberties. That's how dumb they think you are at the White House. Now, regardless of whether this is staged or not, they're using all the clips of congressmen, sheriffs, you name it, saying words can bring danger. You can't even say something critical of Congress people. We're going to pass a law. This is actually happening. These people are not liberal by any yardstick. That's their cover name. Threatening to kick the bums out could be outlawed under new legislation. That's a Politico headline. They're actually saying you don't call them bums. Facts of shooter's political beliefs do not match liberal talking points. Paul Joseph Watson. Classy father of 9-year-old victim. Don't exploit my daughter's death to revoke freedoms. But do the culture vultures back off? No. That's why the White House has written all these memos, and their advisors have, saying we need a big tragedy. We need a terror attack to make us the victims. Boom, it happens. Just like at Columbine. Always the nihilistic, mixed up, screwed up children of liberals deliver. And in every case, and you watch it's going to come out later, in every other case I've seen, they're on serotonin reuptake inhibitors, which they now have to put on the drug insert, causes violent breaks with reality. Continuing here. Liberal smear machine backfires after gunman found to be a cultist, pot-smoking left-winger. Here's another one. Another tragedy vulture exploits victims to push political agenda to kill free speech. Here's another one. Vitriolic flashback. During illegal immigration debate, Sheriff Dumnick calls opponents racist. So, see, they can call you whatever they want. They can say, if you're against health care bill, you don't like black people, which creates racial division and could cause fighting. They don't care, though. They're going to use their political weapons on you. But you're not going to say kick the bums out. You're not going to say my Second Amendment's from my right. But the good news is the tide's turning. In every poll, the vast majority have gone from being for abortion to against it. The vast majority being against the Second Amendment to now being for it. No one 5 years ago knew about the Federal Reserve being private. Maybe 2 out of 50 people, maybe. Now, over 80% know it's private, want it abolished or at least audited. Time is running out for the globalists. The people are aware of the corruption. They want to make it all a big left-wing, right-wing fight. I don't think it's fair to say this guy did all this because he was a left-winger and then let's demonize the Democrats. But his M.O. is a lot closer to that, and his old makeup and what we know about him is a lot closer to what you'd see as extreme liberal. I mean, I guarantee you walk up to some of the vampire wannabes that go to UT down on the drag running around trying to scare people, and you ask them what they believe in, it's going to be communism or something. I mean, you know, it's seen as trendy and cool. And it's disgusting. And I, for one, am sick of it. We got a bunch of audio clips coming up, but, I mean, there are scores of these articles. Gabrielle Giffords shooting reignites fight over right-wing rhetoric in U.S., Sarah Palin at center of storm over political vitriol after spree leaves 6 dead and Congresswoman in critical condition. You know, the Founding Fathers went around actually assassinating tyrants. But they were tyrants who were known to be tyrants and who'd been killing people. I mean, what happened with Ceausescu? Was it right for the Romanians to overthrow that mass murder? Was it right for the German military in Operation Valkyrie to try to overthrow Hitler? According to our government, no. You let the government run all over you. You never stand up against it. But I want to be clear. Going out and becoming violent is not the way to go, because we still can take our states back peacefully and take our Congress back peacefully. The system wants to jumpstart violence to cut that off, to stop that process from happening, where we use words and powerful, truthful words, exposing the authoritarianism, the tyranny that's growing under both parties, to have a rediscovery of liberty and freedom and take our country back. So, go ahead and stage all the shootings you want, globalist. This has got it written all over it. People are wise to you, and it isn't going to work. So go ahead and try to take our free speech on our Second Amendment. We are back live, my friends, and I have a direct and specific message to the gun-grabbing criminals that run this New World Order. Your activity, your seizing on every crisis, like tragedy vultures, has become obvious to everyone. And now we've seen this poor Congresswoman, Giffords, shot, but thank God she's alive and starting to recover. This poor federal judge, Rolls, this little girl, this 9-year-old named Green, being killed. And her father and mother come out and say, don't politicize this. Don't use this to take more of our freedoms. The father talked about how he travels a lot and how hellish the airports are. And he said, don't take our freedoms. Don't go after our Second Amendment. And now AOL columnists and others have viciously attacked the parents, saying they don't deserve to have their little girl. I can't believe I'm reading stuff like this. The truth is, the Democrats predominantly and the environmental movement have been financing movies and TV shows in England and the U.S. that show 9-year-olds in a school being fictitiously murdered because they don't sign on to their carbon taxes. The truth is, we're taught how worthless humanity is and how bad humanity is for the earth every day. The truth is, with this deranged shooter, this guy was shooting videos of the Grim Reaper burning the American flag with devilish music in the background. A day before it came out that he was into the occult, I said, this is one of these vampire-obsessed, nihilistic, people that's into Satanism. And now his friends are saying he was nihilistic. He was into death. He had this shrine behind his house with a skull and black magic voodoo offerings of oranges. That's what voodoo is, the black magic variety of it, or the black magic variety of Santeria. This guy loved Karl Marx. This guy loved anything dark and destructive. He thought he was a woman. He obviously had multiple personalities. And that's why we need our Second Amendment, to defend ourselves from people like him. But now we see this full frontal assault by Hillary and Bill Clinton, by all these other Congress people, blaming talk radio, blaming the alternative media, calling for censorship on the web, calling for people to be arrested who put out any symbols or say anything that could influence someone else to do violence. That's a full frontal attack on the First Amendment. Now, the system is really upset and scared by this because a member of the power structure, in fact, 2 of them, a congressperson was shot and seriously wounded in the head, and a federal judge was murdered. And I would add that Judge Rolls, of course, was the judge who was instrumental in defeating the Brady bill, the 5-day waiting period, with Sheriff Richard Mack, who we've now interviewed on the subject, and was a staunch supporter of the Second Amendment. So was this poor Congresswoman. She was also for controlling the border. And the media is doing everything it can, the dinosaur media, to spin this and claim that this is what libertarians and conservatives have caused. Democracy Now! Has now come out and said that the Rand Paul, Alex Jones, that we're to blame for all of this. This is outrageous, my friends. This is an attack on free speech, not just the right to keep and bear arms. And I want to make this clear. I don't want a violent confrontation with this out-of-control government. But both parties are predominantly controlled by offshore banks. Tens of trillions of dollars have been stolen from our Treasury. Henry Paulson did threaten martial law to Congress through the executive if they didn't give him unlimited trillions. The Obama people have continued what Bush was up to. The dollar is being devalued. We are going into a private corporate world government. And the media is saying that if you talk about that, you support the cold-blooded shooting of that 9-year-old girl, the federal judge, and the Congresswoman Giffords. It's just asinine. The truth is the mainstream media has been discredited. The truth is there is a global private corporate empire that's used the United States as its muscle and as its credit card. And the truth is the American people and the people of the world are waking up and coming together politically, as Congresswoman Giffords had said on Fox just the day before she was shot in the head by this Grim Reaper, nihilistic lunatic. And I had predicted, just looking at his garb and some of his other statements, that he'd be some type of occultic devil worshiper. That's very popular with our spoiled, rotten youth today, who've got a bunch of, parents who did everything for them, including wiping their hind ends when they were 10 years old. I guess it was Victor Hugo that said, adversity makes men and prosperity makes monsters. We're entering a very decadent phase, and that's all the more reason for the American people to be armed against criminals and against tyrants. I am not calling for offensive actions against government. That is the last thing we need. But was it right for the Germans in Operation Valkyrie, in their military, to stand up against Adolf Hitler? Our government today would tell you no. Was it right in 1989 for the Romanians to stand up against Ceausescu, who had tortured tens of thousands of people to death and imprisoned in slave camps hundreds of thousands? Would it have been right to stand up against Stalin or Lenin or Mao Zedong or Julius Caesar? Was it right for black slaves to occasionally stand up when they were being beaten and beat their slave masters right back? Our media, our government would say no. But I go back to Romania and Ceausescu and the video we're showing on screen right now. They were having a rally. The people were starving. There was incredible tyranny. And he got up there at the rally and lectured them, and the police began to beat up some of the people in the hundreds of thousands in the crowd. And Ceausescu said that that was a good thing, and so the people rioted. They took over the Capitol, and they took control of Ceausescu and his wife. They had a trial, and then he was executed. Now, was it right to do that? Our government, our media would say no matter what the state does, you need to shut up and put up with it. You need to put up with people every week being tasered to death. You need to put up with cops shooting innocent people in the back and getting away with it. You need to put up with foreign banks stealing trillions of dollars. You need to put up with the ATF burning down Waco and those little kids inside and shooting them as they tried to run out. You need to put up with the feds staging Operation Gulf of Tonkin to get us into the Vietnam War. You need to put up with bipartisan continuity of agenda, Bush pushing torture and secret arrest, and now Obama doing it and appointing all these mob bosses like Daley to chief of staff. You need to sit down and put up with the mafia machine passing government health care written by the insurance companies to force you to buy overpriced care, and put up with the death panels now being announced by Bill Gates and others. You're supposed to put up with all of that while they give over 500 waivers to Obama's friends so their companies don't have to get insurance, but you do. Walmart won't have to get it. McDonald's won't have to get it, but your little company will. No, we're sick of the Chicago/New York mafia system. We're tired of it. And the globalists, they don't want to have a peaceful restoration through the 10th Amendment, through the states, through Congress of our Constitution, because then they know there will be trials of the Bernie Madoff, Ken Lay-type criminals that run this modern system. They want to provocateur things like the Hatari militia that turned out to be staged, and these Muslim groups that turn out to be staged over and over and over again. Even mainstream news and Geraldo Rivera now admit that. They want to preemptively have a shootout in this country, have a violent type clash, because they know there isn't one Ceausescu or one Adolf Hitler that could be removed and then everything would be okay. This is a dictatorship of corporate criminals manipulating and controlling government. And they're not afraid of Congress people being gunned down or presidents being gunned down, because they know they're puppets, whether it's George W. Bush or Barack Hussein Obama. They are afraid of you taking control of your government and your grand juries and bringing them to justice like a house of cards. As more and more of them fall and get indicted, and that's starting to happen, as more and more of the mortgages are discovered to be fraudulent, as courts are now ruling, their system is imploding. So they preemptively Kind of like the famous oil well companies that knew how to put out a fire. You got a big explosion going, you got an oil well on fire, you use a load of dynamite to blast it to stop that fire. They want to fight fire with fire. They want to preemptively roll that stick of dynamite up there in that wheelbarrow up to the mouth of the big fire and use that explosion to blow out the flames. They want to preemptively jumpstart an Operation Northwoods, like Robert Shapiro has been openly talking about with Obama, needing a big terror attack, needing a domestic attack so they can crack down on the domestic population. We don't want to give them that. Sure, with a Stalin, a Hitler, a Ceausescu, a people counter coup can work, but not when you don't have a single dictatorship. We've got a corrupt system. The main problem is looking at us in the mirror that we allowed it to go this far. It's been said many times that if the millions of gun owners, even if 1% of the 100 million gun owners stood up and started fighting the government, that we would defeat these criminals overnight. That's over 1 million combatants who are lone wolf, asymmetrical, impossible to defeat. There's no way an armed population can be brought into tyranny unless it's done through incremental corruption. And that's why the system wants to have an armed confrontation now, early on, before everybody's awoken, while they still have a chance to win it. We need to peacefully take our republic back and understand that shooting and killing people is not the way to go. Because, again, we're not dealing with a Ceausescu or a Hitler. We're dealing with an entirely corrupt system that is going to have to be taken back house by house, city by city, county by county, state by state, nation by nation. And it's that eternal struggle against good and evil. But to the opportunistic sickos who are using these deaths and hyping these deaths as a pretext to attack the very heart of the First Amendment. They're openly calling for restrictions on free speech now, and to openly attack being able to own more than 10 rounds of ammo. I mean, just amazing draconian tyrannies being announced. This is only serving as a wake-up call. This isn't 15 years ago where the feds could blow up Oklahoma City and use it, you know, to get everybody to feel sorry for them and to demonize liberty. This isn't 17 years ago when you guys staged the situation at Waco where you could, quote, demonize a cult. We're not playing in the same ball game. And you guys are still using the same old tricks. You think we're so dumb? You openly talk about staging stuff like we don't see it. People are waking up and are wise to what you're doing, and you need to get on the right side of history. And for the average, middle-of-the-road liberal, this is all meant to get conservatives and liberals fighting with each other, and so that the left-right paradigm continues on. The system knows that we're awakening and coming together, and they're very scared of that. So if they can get liberals and conservatives blaming each other for who's to blame for this obvious paranoid schizophrenic, they've won. We need to come together and decry senseless acts of violence, but stand for the Bill of Rights and Constitution that so many have fought for. And remember that you have a better chance of being struck by lightning than being killed by a mass shooter. You have a better chance of being killed by a bee sting than being killed by a terrorist. And that this is the media playing this up and hyping it and trying to use this little girl as a martyr against the First and Second Amendment, which are literally holy components of our basic canon that is the Bill of Rights. I hope you'll spread this video to everyone you know. We must defend the Republic from enemies foreign and domestic. We must defend them in the info war because the pen is mightier than the sword. And that is my video announcement to the gun grabbers that they will fail. The victim disarmament crowd, understand this, and may the message be clear to you. You will fail in your quest to disarm us. You will fail in your quest to defeat the First Amendment and free speech. Everyone is going to redouble their efforts. And as you try to create internet IDs, as you try to tax the web, as you try to restrict free speech, as you turn loose the giant cybersecurity, domestic spy corps to go out and stir up trouble and infiltrate groups and provocateur, you're only revealing to everyone what you really are.